Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Big Mustard Couch YouTube channel. Let me just clarify because last week, my first episode, I said podcast. It might have been me manifesting, for speaking, foreshadowing, or whatnot, but I'm not in the podcast game yet. But ultimately, I hope to get there. But this is the Big Mustard Couch YouTube channel. Otherwise, it's the BMC YouTube channel. And today, I'm talking about ordering my first AEW pay per view, All In. Um, First one I ordered, first one I've seen, and I was really curious as far as how much it differed from the weekly shows. So I'm going to get into all that. Before I go forward and proceed with the video, I definitely want to send my condolences to the family of Terry Funk's family as well as Wyndham Watanda's family. Two huge losses to the wrestling community this past week. I will do a video at some point in time talking about my favorite moments as far as following and seeing their careers. But ultimately, again, rest in peace to both of those phenomenal wrestlers and condolences again to the family. Now, moving on to the All In pay per view, everything from the 0 hour, the free part of the show, all the way up into the main event. The pre-show was pretty good. I definitely had my concerns as far as um, Adam Cole and MJF, who's headlining and main eventing, one of your biggest events during the pre-show. Ultimately, even though it was for the ROH tag team titles, I did feel like the stakes were too low, especially if either one of them could have potentially got injured, which would have definitely compromised, the final event, the main event of the show. So not the best call, and it's probably not a call that I would have made, but ultimately it got done. They won the RH champions, only to compromise, not necessarily compromise, but ultimately complicate, excuse me, that's the word I'm looking for, complicate their um, unique bromance that they have going on so far. The intrigue was now that they are they won the RH tag titles. They How would it manifest or how would it show up once it was time for them to really face each other for the big prize. So it was a decent match. It was a little quick for obvious reasons, but ultimately, again, like I said, it was a decent match, but it wouldn't have been a call that I would have necessarily made. The Jack Perry um, Hook FTW title match. Let's just say I hope this is it for those particular two. While I definitely enjoy this new persona of Jack Perry, I think it's fun. I definitely think it's intriguing. It definitely shows a lot of layers, especially him trying to add some depth to his character. I definitely hope this is done. I personally don't feel like the FTW was one of those titles that really brings much intrigue. I think that it definitely, um, for how can I say this in the kindest manner possible, I think it kind of puts an umbrella over Hook. Obviously, he really hasn't. I mean, it wasn't until this past Saturday's event that he main evented and really didn't fight anybody outside of like Jack Perry and Christian. Ultimately, uh, he was able to get in there with some mix it up with some other guys and got in there with some big names. I do think, again, it is really hard to look at him and be convinced that he is that guy or he really is that guy that can compete with the likes of much bigger guys. But that's just me, and I guess that's probably like a personal. I wouldn't even necessarily say bias, but ultimately it's just my personal opinion as far as like when I look at him. But let's see. I mean, he's definitely developing well as far as his overall performance in the ring and him talking a little bit more. I mean, just hopefully, some more comes from this, and he doesn't just rely on, competing with dudes, just along the same size or so. All right. So again, like I said, I hope Jack Perry and him they're able to move on and do something different, respectively in AEW. Now moving on to the main show. Okay, and again, like I said, so this is not a full-on review. This is just again, this me highlighting the fact that this is my first AEW pay per view. Just thinking about how it differs from the the weekly shows that they have, and ultimately if it was worth a buy and if it's something that I would purchase again. So that will come at the conclusion of this video. The first match I want to talk about is the FTR and Bucks match. I definitely think that that was probably like the standout match up until the point, up until that particular point. It was definitely had better fluency. Mistakes were minimal, and the intrigue was there because you didn't necessarily know who was going to take, who was going to take the fall, right? And I definitely respect the Young Bucks, looking outside themselves and definitely, taking, even though they took the L for this one, I mean, they definitely had a great show. And I also appreciate them even walking away. I felt like there was too much, the likes of, I guess it was kind of redundant as far as like the good sportsmanship kind of trope that was taking place, and the respect factor. And while you could still, I'm sure that there was still respect that was earned or recognized between the two. Ultimately, it didn't have to be shown through the fanfare of shaking hands, hugging it out, or anything like that. So honestly, I like it, and I personally miss the Young Bucks from being jerks, and I feel like AEW for the most part is missing that. I feel like there's a lot of talents and a lot of guys that's there who, while they get good crowd reactions, a lot of them kind of teeters as far as like being that face or that heel or just being tweeners, right? And I feel like AEW has too many tweeners at this particular point in time. So I like it. And I hope the Bucks, honestly, I hope they do get another shot. And ultimately, they have to use dirty tactics and ultimately to capture their belts again. I'm all for it. I'm here for it. So even though this is a rubber match between them, like I said, sometime down the line, I would definitely love to see these four get it on again. This 6-man tag, which I was looking forward to between the Bullet Club Gold, Takeshita, and Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi. I'm not gonna lie. I know I probably might get a lot of flack for this in the comments, but ultimately, this is probably my second time seeing Ibushi live at an event, in AEW. I mean, I've seen some of his stuff online. Even Kenny Omega. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not wildly impressed. I understand he's known as being a hard hitter. But this particular match was a mess. At one point, it just looked like everybody was kind of figuring everything out on the fly. It looked like the referee was trying to figure things out on the fly. My wife she watched the event with me, and she even asked me, like, what's happened? Like, is this like, no holds barred sort of match? And it definitely came off like it was like a Texas tornado type of 6-man tag, but it was not that. And again, like I said, it wasn't much fluency in there. Guys looked like they were learning stuff on the fly. And like I said, between Ibushi and Omega, they just didn't look like they had it tonight, And I'm not going to necessarily talk about as far as like the also too the finish of the match. Actually, I misspoke. The finish of the match was very underwhelming. It was very underwhelming, especially to an event of this particular magnitude. I definitely felt like the finish could have been a lot stronger, especially considering you have 6 great talents in there, and just for a simple roll up, or rather schoolboy, it not the best way, not the best way to finish this match. And honestly, like I've been following AEW from its inception, and I'm not gonna lie, and this is probably a video for another day, but Kenny Omega looked like he's definitely missed a step. Again, people are probably gonna flame me in the comment section for this, especially about the Ibushi comment, but ultimately, Kenny doesn't really look himself, and I'm not sure if this is a matter of just a culmination of various injuries. I'm not sure if this is a matter of who's ever producing the match, or maybe they have too much free reign as far as how the match goes. Ultimately, like I said, I wasn't impressed. And for me personally, it was one of the worst matches on the card. Um, and it was the worst match on the card for those various reasons. The second worst match on the card, to which it really wasn't necessarily the worst because by their doing, but it's a matter of because of how the match was booked. Tony Khan, bro, you have to do better with the women. It really made no sense why you had one. I definitely did not understand why um, Sheeta had to fight. What was it? I believe it was last week or a couple of weeks ago. Had to fight to even get into this match, even when her title was on the line. That booking decision made no sense. Um, and then again, ultimately for her just to lose tonight, I have a huge problem with the call as far as her to lose the title because it made her title win feel fruitless, very underwhelming. It ultimately she was a transitional champion for you just to put it on Saraya. And while I'm very happy for Saraya and I'm glad that she was able to do it in front of a family, the hometown crowd and whatnot, it still wasn't a good way to conduct business, and it wasn't a good showing for her, for that young lady. For all that, you could have just kept the belt on Toni Storm, and she could have probably still potentially even made a transition to this Marilyn Monroe character that she's playing right now, which is really good. I'm enjoying it. It's great, but yeah, I felt like all this could have been done but not at the expense of Sheeta having a big moment and giving a fair title run. Um, the timing of the match. The timing of the match was just ridiculous. I believe it was around 8 minutes and change. Not fair. Not fair, especially in front of 80,000 some odd people. Not fair. It was not, and it was the only women's match on the card. It was definitely not fair to those four women. It was over too quick. I literally probably walked downstairs just to get a snack and a drink of water, and when I came up, the match was already finished. Right, and I definitely feel you probably need to get a veteran, women's wrestling veteran, somebody in the back there to help produce the match, and somebody that someone to respect. Or maybe it's just one of the women, outside of Britt Baker has to step up and speak up and just be honest about what's going on with the women's division, because the women's division should have definitely had more than one match on this card, because apparently this is not the first time an AEW pay-per-view. AEW pay-per-views are known for going around 4 hours, 4 hours or more so long. And you could have definitely booked another women's match, even if it would have exceeded, the 3 hour or 3 hour and a half or 4 hour time limit. Again, on a big stage like this, you could have definitely diversified your card and allowed the women to get some praise and to get some shine. So not cool on your part in that regard. The other match that I was kind of indifferent and wasn't sure that I was going to enjoy it now, the Stadium Stampede match. It delivered. It delivered 100%. It was very entertaining. I was confused because I remember the first time they did this, it was like in a open stadium, but it was like no crowds that was there, and I believe this was like Jericho Appreciation Society, and I feel like it was maybe the Best Friends again at that particular time. I mean, I could certainly be wrong, but ultimately it was a good match. It delivered. I could definitely understand why Eddie Kingston is that guy, why so many people appreciate him. I definitely appreciate him. He's like that hood drunk uncle that you always have, that's always down for everything, as far as when it's time to go outside and having to fight and whatnot, and I appreciate his character, and I just appreciate his realness, so it was a match. It was a great match that delivered. One of the moments that did kind of confuse people was the whole Pentagon Obscuro segment. Could have been done a little bit cleaner, could have been done a little bit better. It was sort of underwhelming, and the crowd, I think, kind of got confused too by it, especially when it's like, I don't believe the lights necessarily turned out, but it was like some new music played as if somebody else was coming out. And just to know that all he did was make an outfit change, and then he just came in just for one spot on Santana where he put him through, he did a sunset powerbomb from a ladder through the table, and that was it. Other than that, phenomenal match. I really enjoyed it. The match that I thought that was going to steal the show, for me, and honestly, and just for full transparency, his promo on Dynamite last week from Will Ospreay, uh, that sold me that this is a pay per view I need to watch. This is a pay per view I needed to see. Up until this point, again, I did not know much about Will Ospreay. I knew he had a history with Kenny Omega, and I know that he was a major star in New Japan. I'm aware, like, he's a sought after talent, especially when he becomes a free agent. But the promo he delivered the last week was fire. Definitely sold me. He definitely had a buyer in me, and it was like, okay, I got to see this guy perform. I got to see this. And shout out to Jericho. Shout out to Jericho. For I'm not sure if this was his choice as far as like wanting to face Ospreay, or if this was like a duel, like him and Tony Khan agreed, like this is the match they needed. But for there not to be a title on the line, and yet there was so much anticipation with this match, my hat goes off to both of those gentlemen. My hat goes to Tony Khan as far as booking this particular match, because again, it didn't have a lot of hype going into, and it feels like the hype really came probably like the week of, or just the week before the event, and they delivered. Was the match itself, again, good consistency, good fluency. I feel like it could have probably went a little bit longer. But again, these dudes, they delivered a lot of high spots. Especially that German suplex on the apron. I was really concerned. I was scared for Will Ospreay. But that's apparently that's how he does. That's his style, and he puts they noted, on commentary, he's the most durable wrestler out there, So again, my hat goes off to both of those gentlemen. Am curious to see what happens with Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, because it's like they're always on this off again, on again, off again sort of relationship. But ultimately, my hat goes off to them. I really appreciated that match. The match, my particular favorite match, was that Sting, Darby Allin, Swerve Strickland, and Christian Cage match. Sting, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. When I tell you, the GOAT, the icon, does not define this man enough. He, greatest of all time. Greatest of all time. He put in the work as far as making that match, along with Darby Allin, like putting his body on the line. Same thing with Swerve Strickland. I mean, all these guys was entertaining. Had everything from the brutality to the high spots to the drama to the intrigue. It had everything that you needed in this particular match, and honestly, it came out as one of my favorite match throughout the whole night. The trios contest. Don't have much to speak on about that. I mean, I think it was placed well on the card. I think that actually, it could have probably been placed lower in the card, but ultimately, it was a fun match as well. I definitely enjoyed it. I appreciate the House of Blacks tribute to Bray Wyatt. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really noble of them to do that. And again, like I said, the fanfare as far as like, giving the respect, showing the championships. I mean, I personally didn't like that at the end, especially you've been kicking these dudes down. You pretty much almost pushed badass Billy Gunn into retirement. I mean, I didn't think that it necessarily needed that. But hey, it is what it is. And also too, just as far as redundancy, I feel like there was a lot of the hulking up, like what Hulk Hogan used to do. I feel like there was a lot of that. And even CM Punk in his match with Samoa Joe, he made a reference to Hulk Hogan, which my last video I referenced that he typically does. But this time around with the pandering to the crowd, doing the ear thing, putting his ear to the crowd and then doing the leg drop and then acting surprised when Samoa Joe kicked out. Was a little confused about that. And I'm not sure if Hulk Hogan probably recently said something and if everybody was on one accord to where it's like, they were going to poke fun, or it was like something dropping Easter eggs or something. I don't know. I don't know ultimately what that was about, but I just noticed like a lot of hulking up tonight. And again, not sure necessarily what that was about, but you know, I guess that's the powers that be and Tony Khan and his locker room. The CM Punk match with Samoa Joe. Again, the redundancy as far as like the showing respect at the end. But I appreciated the match. I would say for this one, I didn't like the finish. Similar like the 6-man tag, I didn't like the finish of this particular match. And I know, and I honestly I have not seen a lot of their matches from when they fought in ROH and other, particular other companies. So I'm sure like a lot of stuff that they did was a call back to their previous matches. But I didn't love the finish, honestly. Just looked like one of those things where Joe had to help CM Punk out at the top rope, to even accomplish the move. And the move, honestly, didn't come off very clean. And I know this is wrestling, and as somebody who, I'm not a professional wrestler, so I know that the hours and the practice these guys put in, I really necessarily can't speak to, and I don't want to come off as far as somebody being judgy, but as somebody who's watching it, like I said, it wasn't the most cleanest finish ultimately. But this is not to say it wasn't a good match. I think that it was definitely a great opener. And CM Punk took a hell of a beating, for him to come out on top. I think was a good call. I didn't recall though, however, if at some point I felt like the match was supposed to be for Samoa Joe's RH title. And I didn't know that this was actually for CM Punk's title, the quote unquote real AEW World Championship. But all in all, I think it was a decent call as far as him coming out on top of the match. I think that the loss honestly does nothing to affect Samoa Joe. I would just like to see where CM Punk goes from here. But again, like I said, the whole showing of the respect at the end, I think, for them, it probably went over, they set the tone, and it probably went over better, especially them coming from ROH to where it was like a code of honor, and that's something that they just did. But like I said, I think it was just like it was a redundant trope that took place throughout the whole night, along with, like I said, the hulking up and just the references like to Hulk Hogan. I think it was a little bit much, but like I said, it was probably some inside joke or some inside thing that the guys decided to do. But ultimately, it was a good opener. But again, let me just not leave this out. There was reports as far as CM Punk having issues with Jack Perry and them having like a whole altercation and that coming out at the end of the pay-per-view. I did not watch the media scrum, so I'm not sure if it was addressed. I'm still following up on the story. As I said, as I said last week, I do plan on doing a part 2, and ultimately Punk gave me enough content to cover a part 2. It's probably not going to come next week, but at some point it's going to come because, as I said, CM Punk, you have to check yourself, buddy. And if Tony Khan is not going to do it. The main event was fun. The main event was cool. I'm not going to lie. I really honestly miss MJF from being a jerk as well, from being a complete a-hole. I personally miss that. But if it's a matter of like, to keep him on TV, to keep him competing more, because since he's been champion, and since he's had like again this bromance with Adam Cole, he's definitely been on TV more. He's definitely been more active as far as in the ring. And listen, if it's going to generate dollars or it's going to get people to see him and it's going to keep him on the TV, I guess, so be it. I am curious as far as where this is going to go. Like I said, I hope it personally does not get stale. But one person that I think that folks need, one name rather, I think folks need to pay attention to, and this, I'm not going to say this is a spoiler, it's just a prediction, right? One name I think folks need to pay attention to is Kyle O'Reilly. I'm not sure necessarily, what his status is as it pertains to the company, or it's just like him returning back from his injury. But with him, Roddy Strong and Adam Cole, they were the name of their group is escaping me right now. But along with Bobby Fish at one point in time, they were the guys. Obviously Bobby, they were good friends. Bobby Fish is no longer with the company. But like I said, to my knowledge, Kyle O'Reilly is still with the company. I was expecting him to do a run-in. Honestly, I was expecting him to do a run-in, potentially to lend more intrigue, and potentially maybe it could probably be a tag match or something, between Roderick Strong, with Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly against MJF and Adam Cole, with potentially Adam Cole choosing, Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong and turning on MJF, because at some point one of them has to make a decision. One of them has to be turned heel ultimately to keep this going and to add more drama around the title. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. All in all, was this pay-per-view worth it? Yes, 100%. I do not feel like I was cheated. I do not feel that Tony Khan put out a product to where it was just a matter of that we're just going to go out here and just the idea of being on a big stage was just going to sell itself, and we're just going to go and repeat the same thing that we do every week on television. I definitely see where guys turned it up. The production was a little bit better. Even though there's some stuff, they're still not on the level of WWE, but ultimately it's not the same product, and I definitely seen the guys leave it all out there on the floor tonight. And if all the pay-per-views are like that, ultimately you just earned a new customer in me in that regard. Also too, I want to give Tony Khan his props. This was a big undertaking, 80,000 plus folks. One of the I looked online, I checked it, third highest rated, as far as attended events, wrestling events, next to the WCW in North Korea, night 1 and night 2, back in '95. But for folks who watched Dark Side of the Ring, we all know how that went, or what was the context behind that. So I'm not going to necessarily get into that. But ultimately, the fact is that everybody willingly came here, paid, and wanted to be a part of this event. Speaks volumes. And I definitely take my hat off to Tony Khan as a businessman, as an owner, especially with a young company, just throwing everything against the wall, just saying, you know what, we're going to do this, despite whatever the naysayers, because there was a lot of doubters out there, especially not being to the magnitude of having that much time in the game like a WWE, but he did it. He did it. And keep in mind, he has another pay-per-view in 2 weeks. That even though it's going to be ran nationally, that's a lot. It's a lot to ask for. It's a lot to ask for from your talent. And it's a lot to ask for ultimately as it pertains to buys, because then probably it will be a risk of drop-off, lack of views or lack of ticket sales and whatnot. But we'll see. Ultimately, this was a win for Tony Khan. I appreciate it, and I love every moment of the event, all in all. And again, like I said, I will certainly be ordering again. I definitely look forward to next year's All In pay-per-view when they have it again. All right, y'all. So that wraps up this episode. This is your first time listening to my content. Please join, like, subscribe, share the content. I really appreciate it. It definitely helps me with my goal as far as reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And I can only do that with y'all support. If this is not your first time and that you are a returning listener, really appreciate it and hope you continue to keep coming back and listen to the content. Other than that, I will see y'all for the next video. And until then, stay tuned.